Welcome back. You're watching One on One. We're talking with the former president of Portugal, Jorge Sampaio, also the head of the UN Alliance of Civilizations. What was the defining moment for you? Was it being elected president of your country?
That was obviously a very important moment, but I have three important moments. One, when I was 34 years old, when the revolution came. It was not clear that it was going to come. There was a lot of pessimism, and suddenly I was awakened at 4 in the morning saying, there's something going on, let's go to the streets. And then we all go into the streets and start seeing the tanks moving, etc. So this is a change. First of all, we didn't know what that change was. Was it the right-wingers who really want to avoid any evolution, especially in regarding the colonial problem? Or was it really democratic revolution? That was really something for which we had fought for many years, many generations, with lots of suffering. So that was the defining moment.
How did it affect the people on the street, though? How did the mood of the people on the street change?
Well, I mean, lots of expectations. In fact, one could never have imagined that a regime which had everyone with their mouth shut really collapsed in 24 hours. And this was the most impressive thing. And the famous story of a battalion with tanks coming one street and the other coming on the other, and the major or the captain or the general who was in favor of the regime said, shoot, to the others, and the soldiers did not shoot. And that was the change on the 24th in the beginning of the afternoon, because had there been a really confrontation, we don't know. But to show how these things are, in fact, were the soldiers who did not shoot, and the thing was immediately demolished like that. It fell like that. Secret police fell the next day, etc. So it was very quick. The confusion after that was a much more serious thing. The influence of some of the military, the extremists on one side, etc., etc. It's a long story, confusing story, which in a way was difficult to recover from that. The second defining moment was when I decided as leader of my party, no one wanted to be a candidate for mayor of Lisbon. We were desperate to find a candidate, and I suddenly said, I'm going to be the candidate. And I organized a coalition with the Communist Party, which was totally impossible. But we won the election in Lisbon. And thus I was mayor for 2 terms, general election, because in fact people thought that these guys are good for this kind of thing at this moment. It was a moment of change. And then, of course, the 2 presidential elections, which I happened to win. And those were very responsible and open moments, in the sense that what on earth is going to happen to me now? I mean, now I'm, number one, the responsible person.
How did being mayor of Lisbon, and you were a popular mayor, how did that prepare you for the position of president? Well,
you know, polls are sometimes terrible things. I was not thinking about it. Friends were. It's probably the occasion, you've gone all through. And then suddenly polls starting to appear saying, and I was leading the polls about prospective candidates 2 years before, I mean, and I was leading, and then I was leading, and then I was leading, and I decided 1 year before the election, very early, the presidents don't represent parties in Portugal. They have to be presented by signatures of people. And I decided to present myself very early to show, not even my party had decided who are they going to support. I surprised them with that, I must say. And that gave me certain liberty. I mean, I'm here, I'm a candidate. In February 95, the election was in January 96. That year was very hard in terms of campaigning, and I had to leave the municipality in August 95. But that start gave me the possibility to appeal to different sectors of to enlarge my base, so to say. And this was repeated in the second election.
And presumably your skills as a lawyer, having trained as a lawyer and having practiced as a lawyer, helped you also negotiate your way around.
They did help, but I was bad on television at the beginning. I got cross with newspaper people at the beginning, and I had to learn a lot, and lots of scars. But I think I got a little bit better with the time.
Did you play it safe as president? I know the first term was fairly quiet.
The first term was very quiet. I'm amazed with what you know. But the first term was very quiet. The second term, everything happened, you know. And it was very complicated, really. The Iraqi war, the prime ministers who went away, one for a different thing.
You held out, though. You didn't go
sorry?
for early. You held out. You didn't go for early elections.
No, I mean, no. Always when Mr. Guterres went away, and now he's, as you know, High Commissioner for refugees. He went away, and the parties didn't want to find a majority, so I had to dissolve Parliament. And in 2004, Mr. Barroso said, "I'm going to the European Commission," and I thought that this was interesting. And of course, that created a big crisis, and I had then to dissolve Parliament. I first built up, accepted the same majority with all my friends against that because they wanted the elections, and I was against my friends. Very difficult time in July 2004. And then in November, things were so complicated, and I thought that the old majority needed to be submitted to the popular vote, and the majority changed.
One thing that did happen in your first term, though, was the handing back of Macau to Chinese rule in 1999, which, when it happened for Hong Kong in 97 for the Brits, was a very teary-eyed event. How emotional was that for you and for the Portuguese people?
Well, who was it's a very extraordinary thing, because I was always against colonialism, the colonial wars and everything that represented that. Although history is history, we have to deal with our own history and not forget it. But I was the one who had to deal with the independence of East Timor and with the transfer of Macau. So I really closed the door on the past to a certain extent. The Macau was very interesting because it opened up to me the negotiation with the Chinese, with our governor in Macau, the foreign minister, and myself. I had responsibilities, constitutional responsibilities on the transfer of Macau. The president in Portugal does not have executive power, but Macau was an exception. So I did have to go and follow those negotiations until the famous transfer in 1999, where I had a tremendous sore throat. I was in a dramatic state, thinking that at the time of the passing over, I had to deliver a speech, and I couldn't speak, you know, but I managed to say something, and Mr. Jiang Zemin was very nice, and that was it, and that was that. And then we left at 3 in the morning, and then I got pneumonia because of the climate. I mean, that was an interesting but dramatic story. And on East Timor was a lifetime, really, because I was member of the government for a short period of time, precisely when the civil war started in East Timor and the invasion of the Indonesian in '75, and I was in favor of that liberation and self-determination, which was not complete until the process in '99, the United Nations, everything that happened after, contacts with the United Nations, with other countries, mobilizing everyone, and I was at an independence ceremony with Mr. Kofi Annan, Mr. Clinton, Mr. Howard from Australia, etc., which was very emotional. That was very emotional.
Now, I mentioned at the beginning you have been dealing with the Alliance of Civilizations, but you're also very much involved in the Stop Tuberculosis Partnership too, and that's been something you've been very active in too.
That started by that, a phone call from Mr. Kofi Annan saying if I would accept that. Advocacy on TB or tuberculosis is a strange thing to say. Advocacy meaning that this illness is not forgotten, it's here, it's developing, it's extremely dangerous. At this time, 4,500 people die of tuberculosis every day. And it's now the principal cause of death for those who have HIV. So you see that tuberculosis needs to be put at the same level of one of the pandemics which is devastating parts of the world.
Because people think TB is pretty much over.
Yes, but they're wrong. Unfortunately, they're wrong.
Well, how would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
An honest man. I think that is important nowadays. Someone who always, rather in a patient way, in a moderate way, but never turns his back to a problem, goes back and goes back and goes back and insists and has patience. Sometimes I get nervous, I get irritated, but now it's better, I'm more calm. There's one thing which is missing, fortunately, it's the responsibility of being president. Although my lifetime, every day is a charge day, it is different to be a president of a republic, of a country. Now it's with my successor, not with me anymore, even if sometimes I would like to say something about it, but I don't. And that has always been the core of my lifetime. Never comment the previous chapter of your life. When there is a successor, continue in front, leave him alone, don't bring your shadow on top of the someone who was elected after you.
Well, President Jorge Sampaio, thank you very much for spending the time talking with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.